Oscar Piastri finally got his first taste of racing with Max wheel-to-wheel for a Grand Prix win, and rather predictably the controversy started right from the moment the light went out. Oscar got a fantastic launch off the line, especially if you consider that he was starting on the dirty side of the grid and most of the cars behind him weren't able to get as good starts as he did. Going into the corner, Oscar's launch allowed him to get ahead of Max, and then he was also ahead at the apex of turn 1. Being the car on the outside in that situation is always going to be more difficult because you're basically at the mercy of how much space the car on the inside, who has the right to the corner, wants to leave you. Realistically, even though Max going into the corner had already lost the battle, he decided then to roll off the brakes a lot earlier, carrying much more speed through the corner. However, by doing so, and with Oscar on his inside taking up most of the track by claiming the corner, he was carrying way too much speed and his steering was also almost on full lock, meaning that at that point, he was only going to go one way, and that was off the track. The irony is that we have seen this move countless times over the past decade because Oscar did to Max exactly what Max has been doing to other drivers for years now. Once he claimed the corner by reaching the apex first, he then purposefully ran Max out of room, but crucially, he was still in control of his car and made the corner himself and stayed on track doing so. To me, right from the launch, this was actually more great racecraft by Oscar than some horrendous mistake by Max, and I feel that as much as Max might be the one getting all of the headlines, I think it's important to shift the narrative and actually give Oscar the credit he deserves for nailing the start against Max, which was what ultimately won him the race. The mistake that I think Max made was firstly getting a poor start from pole position and the clean side of the grid, which no one has mentioned, but also just not being able to accept that he was beat. Oscar jumped Max at the line. He was ahead of Max at the apex. He braked very late, but still crucially was able to stay on track doing so. And to me, Oscar rightfully should have been the driver to leave turn 1 ahead because through that first sequence of corners, he did a better job than Max in wheel-to-wheel combat. And now, post-race, Oscar said something very interesting that I think makes it crystal clear how Max's racing throughout the years has dictated the way the other drivers now know that they have to race him as well. Oscar said, "I knew I had to be firm because I knew if it was roles reversed, it probably would have looked identical. I have said multiple times that I feel like in 2021, Max patented a new style of racing. It was all about get to the apex first, and then as long as you do that, regardless of where the other car is, then you won't need to leave any space for the car on the outside because you'll just be able to run them wide and potentially even off the track." That is exactly what Max did then, it's exactly what other drivers have been doing since then, and it's exactly what Oscar did to Max in Jeddah. After the incident, Max and Red Bull felt as though they did nothing wrong and allowed Max to extend his advantage in clean air. This was actually something that the stewards mentioned in their verdict, because not only did they say that telemetry showed that Max basically went flat out when he was off the track to maintain the position on the exit, but when he was then out in front, he made no attempt to let Oscar even catch up just a little bit to give back some of the advantage that he gained. In the end, the stewards gave Max a 5-second time penalty which he had to serve during his pit stop, and we have seen this throughout the season that qualifying, track position and clean air is absolutely everything. This is the first race of the season where someone has won from outside the pole position, and realistically, the only reason that this happened is because Max got a bad start. If Max got even a decent start and stayed ahead of Oscar, going out of the apex and into turn 1 with clean air for the rest of the race, there is zero doubt in my mind that he would have gone on to take the race win, because even when he was out in front during the opening stint, Oscar himself said that his tyres were overheating just trying to keep up with Max Verstappen, and straight away there was never even a chance of him being able to overtake Max, even with DRS. After the race, Oscar and McLaren were firm that they had done everything right and that Oscar not only claimed the corner, but that he also should have been given the position back by Red Bull on track, in the same way that Lando gave the position back to Lewis Hamilton in Bahrain when he overtook him off track at turn 4. Max purposefully said nothing after the race because he knew that there was nothing to gain and everything to lose for him as a driver. However, the real fun and games began when Horner showed up to his media session with what he felt was brand new evidence. He showed the media a still image of Max's onboard from the shoulder cam that the FIA didn't have access to, but to me this was really confusing because this was actually a little bit after the apex when Max was rolling off the brakes, and if you're going into a corner too fast, it's not entirely difficult to find a still frame of you marginally ahead compared to someone who is judged their braking right at the apex. But the point that Horner didn't really acknowledge is that yes, Max was able to get back marginally ahead, but because of it, he missed the following corner entirely and maintained an advantage that he didn't have going into the previous apex. And now, although the battle at turn 1 is the thing that everyone is going to be talking about after this race, for me the most important conversation is how Piastri established himself as the title favourite, and also how he was able to fight Max wheel to wheel and show absolutely no signs of weakness that Max can exploit in the future. Oscar Piastri in that McLaren this weekend wasn't the fastest driver. Throughout practice and early qualifying, Lando seemed to have the edge over Oscar, and Max, by virtue of his pole position and incredible pace in clean air, was also a faster driver. Despite all of that, Piastri still found a way to win the race and take home all 25 points, and more importantly, the lead in the Drivers' Championship for the first time this season. Even though he wasn't faster than Lando, he kept cool, making no mistakes, and was fast enough to be on the front row. And although he wasn't faster than Max, he beat Max off the line and also in wheel-to-wheel combat to deserve the race lead, and just controlled the race perfectly in clean air to the end. On a weekend where he wasn't the fastest, he executed every element of the weekend well enough compared to the other drivers, and some elements even better when he needed to. And to me, being able to win races on days where you're not at your best, that is the hallmark of a world champion. Max Verstappen is easily one of the greatest drivers and one of the biggest challenges that the other drivers have ever had to face in Formula 1, because he has tried to intimidate the likes of Hamilton, Leclerc and Norris on the track, which is what hard racing is all about. And given that this was basically the first time that we have ever seen Oscar and Max go head-to-head for a Grand Prix win, and not only did Oscar handle Max as well as I have ever seen anyone handle Max, but he also sent a very clear message to Max that he is more than capable of playing him at his own game and coming out on top. Max and Lewis always seemed like the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object, and I think Max has realized that Oscar is going to be the exact same. The difference now, however, compared to last year, is that Oscar is the one with the points advantage over Max, and so Max just can't drive him off the road like he did with Lando, because for once, it is Max who's got more to lose than the other drivers. And now, it's impossible to ignore, however, what was yet another bad weekend for Lando Norris, and yet another recovery drive that really should have been so much more. The signs are now there that Lando is not only struggling to deal with the pressure, but that it's also now starting to affect his judgment. The crash on the Saturday was just a classic example of pushing too hard around a street track, but even then in the race, yet again his racecraft just wasn't good enough. In Bahrain, I was very critical that too many times he tried to overtake people into turn 1 when what he should have been doing is what everyone else was doing, which was using turn 1 to set the car up for the best overtaking opportunity, which was into turn 4. In Jeddah against Hamilton, we saw the same exact weaknesses all over again, and even Andrea Stella after the race said as much. 2 laps in a row, he overtook Hamilton into the final corner, only for Lewis to get DRS back and re-overtake him into turn 1, which was by far the best corner for overtaking. It feels like the mistakes, pressure, and mounting points difference between him and Oscar are starting to cloud his judgment in basic wheel-to-wheel situations. More than anyone else, Lando really needs this next week off to mentally reset and just relax before Miami with the right people around him. Because on the other side of the garage, Oscar this weekend, despite not being the fastest driver, mentally delivered a hammer blow against Lando and Max in different ways, and given his lack of experience of only competing in 51 Grand Prix wins, and this genuinely being his first ever title battle in only his 3rd year of Formula 1, it's scary to think that both on and off the track, he looks like a driver who has already won multiple championships. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.